You are listening to the Firecracker Podcast with Tony Rico.
All right. Hello, everybody. We are back in the Firecracker studio. Got a special one today. I think I say that like every time that, but they're all special. Yeah. George, you are special, though. You're special amongst the special people. So
thanks, man.
We've got, I'm going to start with friend and colleague, coach, dad. I don't know what other things you do on the side, so we'll keep it there.
Yeah, we'll keep it.
But we've got Jorge Araujo with us today, and we go back. Gosh, when do we go back till? What was your?
Well,
might be very forgettable first experience.
I don't know. I know I started hearing about you back in the old high school days when I think you were a quarterback at old Bellflower High School.
Let's fast forward because some of those sports stories are good, and then some of them are we might scare some people. But how about softball? How did we connect? So you went to Paramount High School. And I went to Bellflower High School, so a couple of smaller schools here in Southern California. And you're sporting the Paramount hat today. So shout out to all the boys.
That's right. All the Paramount guys. Kind of funny. We just had a reunion about a couple weeks ago, and I bought them all hats. The baseball team was there, so I bought them all hats. And this is the reverse of the our actual senior year baseball hat, which was maroon and white. So it's kind of cool. They were happy about that.
It's not Bellflower Cardinal? Or is
I don't think so. I don't think I'll ever touch that.
I don't know if I could tell the difference. So how many showed up?
There was 10 of us. There was 14 on the team, and 10 of us were seniors, and they all showed up. And
wow.
It was really cool. Really nice to see them.
So I feel like at the age we're at right now, this is an appropriate question, kind of scary. Are they all still alive?
They are. They're all doing well, and we've all had, it's 35 years since 84
That's really
or so approximately.
Cool.
So it's really cool that we get together, and we still have a chat group, and we stay in touch, and I think we deal with sports a lot, and I think that's the important part of sports is the bonds you build with some of your teammates.
Sure. Well, it's great to hear that you guys still keep it going, and so the common denominator for us is Johnny Rodriguez.
Yeah,
right?
Johnny Rodriguez. Yeah.
One of when I say favorite guys to play with, so as far as a favorite teammate, just the way that he was, and then, hit or miss, right? So for every guy in the big leagues, there's, 100 guys that coulda, woulda, shoulda. Man.
Yeah, he's incredible.
He was like our Greg Maddux, right?
Yeah.
Like just the way, so.
Absolutely, and he's the guy that he's kind of the glue to the group. I believe he does the same thing with your old college team.
Right, he does stuff with Cerritos too.
Keeps everybody in touch and just
that's pretty awesome.
Keeps everybody bonded, and he's been like that since he was 10, 11 years old.
So is it your idea alone to get the guys back together? Did you work with Johnny on it? What?
Yeah, well, it was a reunion, and Johnny was obviously part of the reunion committee and stuff. Got everybody together and made sure we all showed up and did all the legwork for everybody. And he's just that kind of a guy,
right?
That he was like that as a teammate, and he's like that now as a grown man.
Yeah, pretty awesome stuff. So, and he's still working in. What does Johnny do now?
Johnny
he was Parks and Rec for a long time.
He was Parks and Rec for the city of Paramount for a long time. As a matter of fact, in our game, I think Kelly Anyway worked with him, and city of Paramount had a lot of good athletes come out of there. But there's a little history with him. And Johnny came out of Paramount and was a good pitcher, and unfortunately got hurt. I think, I always joke with him, but I think he could have been a Kershaw type guy.
He was just he just made it look so easy, and he was just I remember first experiences playing against him in high school. He was just fun to compete against. Kind of the wrong side of the playing attitude that I grew up with is always about being way too intense and I always want to fight and it's just stupid stuff like that. Johnny was a guy that even when you're in that mode, you can't dislike Johnny Rodriguez. I mean, he was just, and you had to respect what he was doing. So,
absolutely.
Cool.
And it's awesome when the best player on your team is also the nicest guy and the leader and incredible.
What a message, right? Because that's not always the case. A lot of times to have the edge, socially you're not always the most
the guy was voted, I think, Mr. Personality at Paramount back in those days. So that's
Johnny
that's
still got it too. He still has it. It's always going to be with him. Think about George the connections and relationships that started with baseball in the area that we grew up in. And so I know that there are pockets in the country that, there's just things that happen that come out. So whether it's football, I would say obviously football, Nebraska and stuff like that, but the quality of players that weren't high profile, major college recruitees. We only saw a few scouts for a couple players growing up, but look at how many people are still involved in the game, how many of those relationships. We kind of have pinch ourselves kind of moments with some situations we've been fortunate to be a part of. And who would have thought way back then? Because, it's not like you grew up in, I think that kind of gated community was like Downey in that area, right? So in that, but there was different pockets of the neighborhoods, and you had your own share of things to deal with growing up, right?
Absolutely.
Grew up around the boys?
Absolutely. Growing up around the boys and growing up in the neighborhood and trying to stay safe,
So how'd you stay out of trouble? Because that's good for people to know. So why didn't you veer left and try everything and end up on the wrong side?
Well,
was it sports that kept you?
That's interesting you asked that, because I don't get asked that question. A lot of people don't know my history. And but yeah, I grew up in I wouldn't say a super tough neighborhood and stuff, but it was you have to know how to survive, definitely know how to survive in that environment, and I learned how to survive there. And I think sports was a big part of it. The sports, I don't want to describe it, but it takes you out of the neighborhood a little bit. You get on certain teams, and then now you go play in different cities and different environments and different communities, and you start seeing things a little bit different. It's not just so much about your neighborhood.
You think there's an identity that you establish, and then people in the neighborhood, see you as an athlete,
Yeah, I always say, sports is the greatest equalizer, right? You equalize when you play sports. So now you can leave the neighborhood and you can leave the community, and you're treated as an equal for pretty much all the time. Unfortunately, a lot of the kids in those neighborhoods, they don't get that opportunity, and all they know is that environment, and they don't know that there's something better. They don't know that there's great people everywhere, right? All they know is their neighborhood. And I think what sports does is it allows you to get out a little bit and see things and get different perspectives on different people and different communities, and get some different ideas in you.
A little diversity in your life. So have you found that? I can remember having the experiences when somebody talked to somebody from the neighborhood about the opportunities they could have for themselves through sports or this or that. It didn't register as much because there wasn't a lot of self like, I want to be this, I want to be that.
Yeah.
Well, what I found, especially like with softball recruiting, is do you have brothers and sisters? Are you going to have nieces and nephews that someday you'd like to provide for, like to be able to help? Because there's still a strong family component. So whether it's, people you hang with on the streets or your family itself, that doing things for others, it's interesting how even in, a particular culture or two where, obviously grades should be enforced, but a lot of times it's family first, it's relationships, it's not always the business aspect of stuff. So it's interesting to motivate someone or try to inspire someone that has opportunities, but it's not an easy place to reach, right? Because it is what it is when you live in these areas.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't realize it, but sport is probably the last thing that people are thinking about in those communities, in that environment. Sports is not something that is a priority. It can come if it's available and you have the chance to do it, but it's mom and dad aren't thinking about, hey, my kid needs to play sports. It's more my kid needs shoes and my kid needs, they're not worried about buying a new bat.
Well, because it goes into now, leagues and providing, but really I'd say the message for people is like, what if we would have never seen anyone just bounce the ball against the wall?
Yeah.
Because that's what looked like fun, was just the tennis ball and the handball court, simple things. We have pitchbacks and stuff out here to kind of take people back to the beginning of it, of why, why were we the kid with the ball and the glove and chose to do what we did with the time. I'll explain. Yesterday I had a dad in here ask me, how young do you take players or students? Or I said, that's an age where it's kind of like a guitar or something, or a piano or something. If your kid asked to do something and then they pick it up a lot on their own, that's a good sign. But if you've got to tell them to pick it up, you got to tell them to go outside and practice. And right now in the business age of softball, that has become that. We have players that have batting cages in their backyard that they don't want to go in that cage. They'd rather work out here. It's a little different environment.
Yeah, for sure.
Could we even imagine having a batting cage in our backyard?
Oh my goodness, that is amazing.
We'd be in the Hall of Fame right now, George.
Absolutely. Well, I had a brick wall at the apartments I lived at, brick wall, and I had a golf ball and my old raggedy glove, and I'd play catch against that wall forever.
And the golf balls are great because they picked up speed. Absolutely. So you were going to develop a little bit quicker.
I don't think I realized that at the time, but
one or two in your face.
Yeah, you know what I mean? You get it, and you start playing with the golf ball, and I think that's, I was a decent infielder, I guess, but it helped me out a lot.
Right, and that really comes from just developing hand-eye coordination, those skills of just kind of playing catch and stuff like that, loving to play catch, right?
For sure.
So let's go. So today's an important day, a man that influenced both of us, and we were very close with and love him a lot. But this is the 4-year anniversary of Coach Normie's passing, and man, 4 years goes by fast. And I can honestly say, George, that he still lives in me. There's still so many things. This point, him always pointing like this, there it is. It's that simple. I mean, now I find myself doing that. But that's another common denominator that we had. And to go back on some of the infielding stuff, because Normie was a guy that grew up in the neighborhood, and in asking him about what it was like, and he would say, he goes, look, the boys didn't bother me because they knew that I was the ball player. So actually they kind of lived through him a little bit. And so whatever he was doing that made them proud. And so it was kind of a hands-off situation for him. Normie loved infielding and did a lot of that, and it was good with hitting as well too. When you got into softball, was it with Firecrackers that you met Norm? Where did you?
I did. It's actually an interesting story, and I think this is probably one of the reasons why, in all honesty, I fell in love with the man. I fell in love with the man, just the way he approached everything. And I was coaching a travel ball team called the Lakewood Ladies at the time, which later on you went on and had a few of those players. But we were over at a local park, and Normie walks up, and he's watching our games, and I had no idea who Norm was at the time, and he's sitting there watching our games and just looking at our players. I'm, who is this guy? And he showed up to 2 or 3 games, and after one of the games, after watching a few, he comes up to me and he says, hey, George, I'm really interested in taking a couple of your players. And I said, excuse me? And he said, yeah, I like your players. I like your shortstop. And who's Katie Medina, who played for you. And ended up winning 2 national championships at Florida, and just an amazing player. And he came straight up to me and told me he was going to take a few of my players. I thought he was kidding, and I thought he was. And then after a while, I thought he was full of what. And sure enough, he started coming around, and I started liking his conversation. And he'd bring me some pan dulce and some coffee in the morning. And before you know,
he knew the ticket to your heart, the way to your heart, right there.
Absolutely. Before you know it, he was. I was giving him some of my players.
So I'm wondering, in all honesty, how did he find you? This wasn't because I don't work that way. So I'm wondering right now, how did he get there? Who told him about it? I don't recollect anything. Hey, I'm going to go watch his team. And then that was kind of the old methodology of like, hey, so here's very transparent though.
Well, back then,
right? It wasn't calling your players.
Absolutely.
Very transparent.
Absolutely.
I'm here to, right?
And that's exactly why I think I really appreciated him, and honestly, and, really, really a great man, a good model, right? For
so
coaches.
That's around 2000.
I would say it was probably around 2006, maybe 2007, right around that time. But we had some good ball players,
puppies.
and
they
were young players, and I started doing my homework on Norm and Don Menard as well, right? I mean, those guys just knew every player that was out there in that era.
So you started the ladies. Obviously, that was the first travel ball for Audica coming over.
Yeah. So my younger daughter, or older daughter now, she's a little older now, but I didn't start the Lakewood Ladies, but I was definitely a big part of it. There was a man by the name of Mike Freeman.
Mike Freeman.
Yeah, Mike Freeman.
Sorry, Mike, I knew that.
Yeah, and Mike was the originator of Lakewood Ladies, and they were looking for to start up a young team, and they came knocking, and
you were coming out of
rec ball, out of the city of Downey Rec.
Okay.
Coaching young kids, and I think it was 8 and under, 10 and under at that time, and Lakewood Ladies had just won national championship, a 10U national championship.
Did you coach in rec ball?
I did.
Enjoyed it?
I did. I loved it.
Had you already been bitten by that bug?
I loved it. Yeah. I started really. I just enjoyed being around the game. Baseball and softball was so closely connected to it, different but closely to it. I love the competition of it, even at that age, which some people thought was a little crazy, but
well,
it
it's competitive,
was great.
absolutely.
It was great. I really loved the teaching aspect at that level.
So when I first met you, it was Bill West.
Bill West was my assistant
So
coach.
did he go back to rec ball as well, or
he was actually a rec ball dad, and he was sitting there keeping score one game, and just sitting there. And I asked him, I'd tell him I needed a little help, and he jumped on board, and he was awesome.
That was a big part of your first step right there, right?
You talk about another great man, right?
Yeah.
You talk about another good person on your team, and did a lot of work. And that's one of the things that I want to say, man. These coaches at the roots level of softball, I mean, how vital are they, right? Sometimes at the higher levels we forget about that, but these coaches at the 10U, 8U, even in the rec leagues, the ones that are doing it the right way, is just so vital.
They're vital for the building blocks and the part of the platform for the player success. But part of our story, some of us are fortunate, others are more fortunate than others. But I want them to understand that they're an important part of our story. They're still part of our story. And even just mentions in situations like this is important for people to realize that they're not forgotten.
Right.
Because we're the more fortunate that we become, the more thankful that we
absolutely. The more you see it, right? You see it, and they're very important to our
So
game.
anyone else go back to the start of the operations with the ladies besides Bill when you came over, made the transition?
Well, the one that got me introduced me to Mike Freeman was Susan Rodriguez, who is incredible. Her daughter played for me, and she was the younger one on at Mike's 10 under team. She was the young kid, so she had to stay back. Stacy, played at University of Mexico.
And was a hell of a hitter.
Hell of a hitter. I mean, she was just an incredible ball player.
Right. One of those players that here in Southern California doesn't develop the full identity because we're saturated with a lot of talent. Kid gets into college and just tears it up. They were both very, very talented.
Yeah, younger sister too. Right. I want to say the younger sister played at your organization.
Talented soccer, right?
Just really, really good ball players. But Susan's the one that got me started. I didn't even really know about travel ball softball until she says, "Hey, come." I coached Rachel, who was the Stacy's younger sister,
right.
And I guess Susan saw me out there coaching, and she said, "Man, this guy might do a decent job at the travel ball world."
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, good, kind of crazy. So I went for it. I said, "Let's do it," and that's how I started my travel ball career. Yeah, it's pretty cool story. But Susan was the instigator of the travel ball.
Always don't judge her by what you see here, because she's always so calm and cool, right here. And if you don't know her, it's kind of a misread.
Absolutely,
but get to talk to her a little bit.
Very sharp, intelligent, hardworking woman. High-end math teacher for the city of Downey, and she's just an incredible manager.
Yeah.
And as coaches, we know that we can't survive without our managers.
Not enough coaches know that. So coaches, that you need to surround yourself. I mean, we're only as good as the people around us. So for whatever strength we have weaknesses, and that's especially in business softball today. We need to make sure that we're providing those other things in our operations.
Yeah, and then another point, and I know Coach John Scalinas, who I played for at Cal Poly, and it's a cliche, but surround yourself with good people, right? Always surround yourself with good people, and I've always tried to follow that model. I just try and do that. And Susan,
so don't lose track of the simple things.
Don't lose track of them, man, because they're huge.
When you're young, they tend to a lot of times, in my experience, they didn't go in one ear and out the other. They go in one ear, but they don't really register. But they sit there because some point later on down the road, it kind of works. So the first group that you had with the ladies will always be a special group, a special team. It's not even signature is one word, but sometimes like a group helps define like who we are or what we are. We've been doing this long enough. We've had a few different groups doing that, but man, George, I think of that team, and man, that was special. So how did that group come together? Were the few of them playing rec ball came over? How did you find the mix of the Tinas, the Corals, the Gordys, the Katies?
It was. Sometimes I say it was by luck, but I don't know.
How did that team form? How did they come together?
Well, it started out of Downey Rec Ball, which was incredible, which was awesome. And the Downey Rec Ball was a
Tina
great
and
program.
Katie.
Tina, Katie, Stacy. You had that group, and you had my daughter, and then Anissa Ortez, who now plays on the Mexican national team. So
Tina Josefa goes on to her senior year to lead the country in home runs and RBIs at University of Georgia. Katie goes on to win a couple national championships with University of Florida. Anissa, blooms and blossoms later, at Utah, and right now is arguably playing the best softball she ever has.
Absolutely.
I mean, because she to me now became the professional player, professionalized her game. Wow. Really amazing.
Yeah, she just took off. And she was always good. I always tell a story.
Very athletic, always very
athletic. I mean, I tell a story about her and my daughter, and I used to give him some batting practice with beans. I taught some beans, and I might have read that someplace, or back in the old school. But I'd give him batting practice with good old pinto beans and a broomstick, and they must have been about 5 or 6 years old at that time. And I used to just do that, I'd pitch to my daughter, and pitch would have to be perfect for her to hit it. With Anissa, I'd pitch everywhere. I could throw it up over her head, and she'd hit it. She just had that good hand-eye coordination at a really young age. And when she just decided to take off and take it a little bit more professional, a little more serious about what she was doing, and just took off. Had a great career at the University of Utah.
Amazing
and
story.
Played with the Comets this last year, and played pro ball, and now starting shortstop.
And going
To the Olympics. Yeah,
Olympics.
she's going to be an Olympian, so I'm really proud of her and what she's done. And it's and then a lot of those kids, right? That Lakewood Lady group. Yeah. I mean, Missy's another one. Missy Takiaho, just incredible, All-American at the institution where I coach. So
I thought of Missy this morning because she was one. She was there at Norm's passing, so we got there that last day he was in the hospital, and so you never know the timeline of it. So the waiting room is really full, then it moves on. It's getting later, but Missy was there to the end, man. She stayed there till the very end. And that's, again, that takes it to another level as far as the relationship goes. But Missy definitely is on the list of the most feared hitters.
Absolutely.
That
incredible
we've ever had,
hitter.
And
I mean, she's just amazing. Well, here's another one that was in that group, and that's the one that kind of gets overlooked a little bit, but it's Gordy Bravo.
Absolutely.
I mean, barely
hardest,
5 foot
I'll say
tall.
right now, hardest working player we've ever had. Nobody's ever outworked Gordy. And I would say that the family she's grown up in, and the standards that they have, I'm going to say right now, George, they never missed. Michelle would bring her in to work out. They never missed a week. It was incredible, the work ethic from the Bravos. Still to this day, a standard that has been set.
She's I ran into her last weekend out recruiting, and she's coaching in college now. And amazing. I told the story. I'd never forget her mom and her being there always an hour before I got there, and they were doing tea work. Yeah. At that old little school where I used to coach at. But
Pattison, right?
Pattison Elementary School. Yeah, that was.
Well, I was just thinking right now when you're talking about Anissa, and then really what's happening, because there's still more players to talk about. And I've said this a few times to you, who would have thought? You couldn't even have thought back then. You're just trying to get the field dragged with your chain link fence.
Yeah. My chain link
Which works.
Which worked.
Smooth it out.
Kept it humble, right? And
it was amazing. So, and Gordy had a great year, great career at BYU.
Yeah, incredible.
Tore it up. Performed very, very well. They were really, they were thicker skinned and they were tough.
Definitely, yeah.
And so that was something about that team.
Yeah. Well, I think you might do the same thing. I think most college coaches do the same thing as well. Is when you're out there looking for players, right? You kind of bond with the kids that were kind of like you when you were playing, right? And
right.
Your personality.
You identify with it.
You identify with it, the grittiness or whatever it might be, with in that particular coach.
They can get grimy out there, right?
Yeah. Right. And I definitely appreciated that kind of.
I think that whole so Coral Costa went on and just tore it up. And again, dealt with life, deals with life, and then just tore it up at Oregon. I mean, I think of the big moments that she had, right, in big games. But then, as we know, kind of and I'm sure we go back to your reunion from Paramount High School, that when you think about the group, it's not always just about the performers, because everybody in the group is equally important. Some of them went on, some of them didn't. But you go back to the core group. I think of Kayla, your second baseman, right? And she was such an important part of that group, growing up, and her family growing up. So again, I mean, if any of them, happen to come across this, they just need to understand their place in history for what you've done, for what happened in our program. Proud of them, not just because of their accolades. The accolades are really cool to watch. Yeah, really cool. Yeah. Proud of them because of where they come from.
You still have, and I don't want to leave them out either, but because they were, you had the Lexi Robles, incredible,
Mariah,
come on,
and
Mariah
go
Ramirez.
through the whole roster. There was who didn't?
Nancy Bowling, right, played at U of A, and she was just incredible, incredible pitcher.
Damn, George.
Yeah, it's a good group of players, and I know I'm leaving out a few like Sarah Smith and Katie Paulo, who played locally here.
Oh my God, Western. Her home run against Florida, that was crazy.
Was that incredible? Yeah,
knocked them.
Yeah, so
and there was something. Were you watching that when that happened? So Kaylee comes up, they're down. It's like a backbreaker. Florida has to get one out, I think, something like that.
I think they were down to the last. They need one more strike, basically.
Super regional.
Go to the World Series.
Yeah, Georgia versus Florida, and Kaylee comes up and hits a 2-run home run.
A 2-run home run to
win it, knock Florida out.
And
slay the dragon right there.
Take Georgia to the World Series.
Machine, right?
Incredible moment. And I remember Jerry Glasgow, who's at Lafayette, and him recruiting her and sitting we're at Triple Crown in Colorado underneath that white tent back there, and he was doubting if she can get it done. I said, Jerry, I'm telling you, this kid's going to play for you. And she delivered the goods when when it needed to be done.
Well,
right?
I'll tell you what, he came walking up. How this is relatable to any coaches that might be watching is I'll tie that in a second, because you don't know what you're sitting on with your players.
Yeah.
So in fact, in the relationships that you build with college coaches, build on value and fact and truth. Don't build on this traditional communication and behavior that ends up just being kind of shallow. So Jerry comes up to me in Colorado, and he's looking for power. So I said, I've got one, but she's not ready yet. She's only a sophomore, and she's not even playing this game. And so it was Tina Josefa.
Yeah.
And God, this is such a great story. So he's like, well, I don't want to impersonate him, but he's like, okay. He goes, well, what can you do? And I said, let me do a couple drills before the game. So I tell the team, I said, hey, go play little diamond catch, and then flip Tina some front toss over here by third base, let her head out towards center field. We don't want to mess up the field for the next game. So they start off, they're doing their diamond catch. So, all right, decent hand-eye coordination. And she starts hitting soft toss. I forget who was feeding her. And she hits about 3 line drives and 2 ground balls. And I'm thinking, oh, shit. Like, come on, man. Like, bring that ball up a little bit. And so Jerry's kind of watching, and I'm waiting for that feeling of like, come on, Tone, like, really don't waste my time here. She hits one. And I forget who was feeding, but she elevated the ball up about her belly button. She hits one, goes over the trees, right? Jerry gets his camera out and just starts shooting. Well, and he looks at me right there. And this is, again, the kind of credibility you want to create as a coach. It's also says something about Jerry Glasgow.
Yeah.
But he looks at me and goes, Tony, you tell me she'll be ready because I'll take her. And so we made the verbal agreement back then. This was when you could do that. That was a long time ago. And I said the rest was history. Because it comes from a point where when we're dealing with kids that have certain backgrounds, George, we don't know if they're going to be able to make it on their own 2 months. You don't know. I mean, it's not automatic. It's not about just getting him to school. So with Tina's background and everything, taking care of older relatives, different things like that, you didn't know. And so look she rooted. She was there. Great story. Beautiful young woman. Like,
I think she holds the RBI record, NCAA RBI record. I think
probably.
I'll have to check that out. But
it was
close.
ridiculous, and it got to the point to where, I mean, you could almost feel it coming. You're watching the games on TV, and you can almost feel it coming. So the value that you build in your players, we talk about skill building, but wouldn't you say the common denominator with that original team with all these players that went on to do great things was corazón, was heart?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Right?
They all had big hearts. They all came from a different, I would say, you're less entitled kind of environments, right? They all were hardworking kids and hardworking parents, and
even if they were provided for, they do hard work.
They understood value. They understood value. They knew that their parents were spending money on them to play travel ball and lessons or whatever they had to do at the time, but they understood. They had a sense of value, and not that it was just given to them for free. And I think thanks to my coaching staff, I think we brought that along, that everything that they got, they had to earn, and it wasn't going to be given to them. And we made some tough choices along the way to prove, or not to prove, but to lay the groundwork down for what we wanted to do, right? And what our philosophy was in the travel ball world.
And you'd won a national championship with that team.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for people that know you in the recruiting world to know that, look, you didn't enter the college game as just I want to do this and I hope I can. There's a body of work there so that when we talk about recruiting here in a couple of minutes, again, I want people to understand where that perspective comes from, because I think that when someone has a certain level of success doing something, it gives their word a different type of meaning. Everyone is entitled to, and everyone has an opinion. But there's models of success, and there's a lot of people in our industry that are trying to be successful. So I want them to understand that it's not just this narrative that we're covering here. There's substance to this from where we come from. Everyone has different backgrounds.
Sure.
No matter where you come from, what you have, there's a place to come through in the middle with softball that it's not dependent on what your background is, but it is interesting on how the backgrounds affect things, and especially with this particular team. So, gave that a good amount of time to talk about, because just sitting here, the more I think about it, it should. That team has a legacy. Yeah. And they have a place in softball history, and now it's going on to some other cool things. So,
absolutely.
I want to move on to your infielding classes. So, I would just call you an infield specialist. A lot of people think they can do this and do that, but infielding always been a love of my life and you and growing up, and balls against the walls and different things like that. But Tell me how that has kind of fit into your overall coaching, because right now at Cal State Fullerton, you still run camps
Defense.
and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
So what is it that you look to develop in players? Are there certain things in particular? Is it a footwork? Is it a rhythm? Is it stylistic? You're getting your hands on a lot of kids now. And so we always want to make the sport better. So how would you describe what it is that you're looking to do with your infield classes and when you get kids in your hands?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I get asked that a lot. And I remember Coach Galindo saying you have the ziggers and the zaggers, right? And you got your infielders that can feel that ball that's zigging, but who's that infielder that can feel the ball when it zags, right? And that's what I look for. I look for those kids. I think you and I were out a couple weeks ago and we saw a shortstop, and ball took a bad hop on her, and all of a sudden, boom, she was able to move her hands to that ball, right? That was just a natural. I don't know if she trains that or not, but at least she has the ability to do that at a fast moment, and that shows good reflexes, right? Like in any good athlete.
Sure. So you like keeping your eye open for that kid that can
absolutely
show you a little, right?
Absolutely. The fielding development and defensive. There's a lot of good infielders out there. But what's going to separate them, and it's usually that natural instinct and the natural handwork and footwork that the good ones have.
A lot of drills that you do that cover all positions and general type infielding skills, and then go to position specific.
Yes, for sure. Let me touch on the first one. To keep it a little short, there's basically three kinds of infielders. You have your what people call your funnelers. That you'll see them in Major League Baseball. They like to funnel the ball and they bring the ball in to their body, which is a good and effective way to field. The problem, each skill or each style has its drawbacks, and it's good. The funneler tends to create long hops a lot, allows for the ball to get a little long on them, which creates a few errors. But there's a lot of good infielders that do it and are effective with it.
Right.
So I don't try and take
really
that away.
how you apply it, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Are you getting outs? Are you making plays? And if that works for you and that's your style, then go.
It's something that we use a lot, and I think it's important to understand that with the funneling, what happens out here dictates what happens back here.
Sure.
So if it's not happening here, it happens back here, and it's two. This is the worst position to be in, like getting handcuffed. So it's really how you apply each.
Absolutely. Right. And again, it comes down to, is the kid getting outs and
making the play,
making plays, and if that works. And I think that's another important element with infielding, is that you find out what a kid can do. What her style is a little bit, I guess, and let them be creative with it. Right. We try sometimes in our game to be a little too cookie cutter, to use. Can't think of another word to use, but a little too cookie cutter.
So have you found that there's times when it's here, there's times when it's there. It's really,
there's no doubt about
a little bit of everything.
Can you read the hop, right? Can you read hops and know when to get your hands out, know when to bring your hands in, and know when to bring them up? That all comes to play.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with the development of the player at a young age, and that's why infielding coaches and infield and travel ball coaches or rec ball coaches, they're critical that they're teaching the right mechanics. And if they have a hard time with it, maybe they played a position that they didn't have, get with somebody who knows a little bit in infielding, because as they get older, those habits, the bad habits, are really hard to break.
For example, when working with young players, what advice would you give to coaches working with 10s, 12 years old to concentrate on what types of things would you say?
Yeah, I would say concentrate on the glove work itself. Go ahead and don't be afraid to use one hand. Our softball players come in, the ones that I get, very mechanical and always wanted to use two hands, because we preach use two hands, use two hands. It's not necessarily true at the older ages.
Once the ball's on the side of your body, you gotta
use it. You gotta be able to grab it, right?
Throw a bouncer from the outfield, you gotta grab it, and you gotta turn it over and get that quick tag down.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. So don't be afraid. And I think probably the most important is get some good instructors with you. Get some guys that or young women. There's a lot of young women out there that are fantastic infield coaches.
But let's go back to like how we grew up. We didn't have any infield coaches.
Yeah.
So go back to Ozzie Smith putting the paper bag and the rubber band around. There are times when I'll just bounce a tennis ball, just grab it with your hand. We put this glove on him, and now everything's like how are you using your fingers? So it's just, we'll have our catchers here. One of our catchers has a knee injury, and it's interesting how you make stuff up. So in this warehouse back here, we have limited space. So we have some some flooring over here. I'll sit them down, and they'll sit close, and we'll do a bounce and just catching the tennis ball. Norm was great with those tennis balls.
Oh, he
So
was
Norm
awesome.
would work those tennis ball drills for any players that knew about that. He was just great. So we have still his bucket of tennis balls back there. Just different things. Dexterity with the hand and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Small gloves, simple drills. Everything doesn't have
Simple
to be
drills.
a full fungo hit.
Right, absolutely.
Full speed.
Absolutely, rolling the ball. We do tons of rolling at with the Mexican national team and at Cal State Fullerton. We just do
I still do
a
to this
lot
day.
of it. I mean, that's where they develop that good muscle memory, right?
I feel like that's where I don't want to say purified, but that's where the shaping really takes place, is where the really slow and then just repeating it over and over. I always get this watching a basketball player just almost like the 3-point contest. It's just the same thing, develop certain skills, and then as the ball does different things, you
Absolutely.
react to it, right?
Get out and watch good softball players. Get out and watch, your collegiate level kids or your high end infielders, right? Whether it's, I shouldn't just say softball. Watch some of the baseball players that are out there, right? I mean, they just watch them and start. This is more for the younger. This is advice for the kids.
Yeah.
Get out there and watch them and see what they do. And I know you hear it all the time, but really, the good ones actually do it. They go. And they
So
watch.
when you, again, to share with people, what is the difference between a top Division I, Power 5 conference type infielder that you can spot right away? Is it size, speed, athleticism, all those things? Is it, because there's so many different versions. Because what happens in our sport is when you're not that and you're not in the top 7,000 player list or whatever that's coming out, you don't have your identity. Like some of the great players we talked about on your original team didn't have that identity growing up. But so what would you say separates kind of those top elite?
Well, I know that I'm trying to be careful of what I talk about here, but I think, numbers are becoming a big part of our game. So in other words, what I'm starting to do a lot more is on measuring. So in other words, I want to see what an arm strength, our best arm at our school is probably about a 71 mile an hour overhand throw. Which is pretty darn good. Your upper kids are about 65 miles per hour. So I don't know if these numbers are going to hopefully they make a little sense to the viewers. I'm sure they will.
But use them as just even starting numbers for older players, not your 12 and under kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a time for everything. And talking about your older players,
Say
start
high
measuring
school
certain
age,
things.
mostly matured.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Same thing with slapping, right? And all these measurables that you can measure. I'm starting to do a lot of that now. I think our game is evolving into that a little bit. Now, here's the tricky part is getting all the other nuances, right? I mean, we could measure the arm strength. We could measure quickness. We could measure speed, size, all of those things that can be really easily
But now
seen.
getting a jump on a ball.
Yes.
Communication,
Quickness,
calling for a ball in the air.
Calling for that.
Right.
Now, if you're going to be a top-level shortstop, what Katie Medina comes in mind, right? What's your heart like? What's your grittiness like? What are you going to bring to the game?
So behavior's a factor.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And we really tend to look at that where I'm at. We look at that characteristic is the behavior, right? What kind of player is she going to be? Is she going to be tough?
Do you think enough parents and coaches, and I say parents first because everything starts at home, is there enough education for them to understand the importance of behavior? Is it really talked about enough? I mean, that's important to you, what you're looking for, right?
For sure. I don't think it is. I really don't. I don't think that's something that's hard to evaluate, right?
It's not glamorous. It's not
It's not
something
glamorous.
that people want to say, hey, let's talk about how you're going to walk on the field.
Yeah. They don't talk about the posture, right? Or how their presence.
And in a certain mindset that I had at one point, I could give a crap about it. Like, what do I care about that? But then that was the time that I needed it the most because I didn't get it. But I understand the mindset when I want to go work on something physical, when I say glamorous, it doesn't mean that, I want to work on something glamorous. This is just, it's like the fastball and the home run, man. It's the glamorous part of the game. So let's hit it as far as we can. Let's throw it as hard as we can. But then there's the functionality of this game, right? So behavior is a big part of it.
It is a big part. It is, especially for us, at our school. I mean, we really take a good look at that. Who's going to impact our players in that avenue, right? Like who's going to be that kid.
So do we start off with just eliminating bad body language and working up to someone that has good energy and seems like they're really good for the team?
I don't say you eliminate a player that's like that. I wouldn't say that. I mean, they could have other attributes that can compensate for that.
And maybe it's unmanaged, so they just have never been.
You got to know how to manage it. But we definitely lean towards that. But man, in the reality of of our world, right? I mean, if a kid is good and can get a lot of stuff done from the physical side, you're definitely not gonna, disregard a kid just because her posture and all that stuff's not where it needs to be, because she's still delivering. She's still has the potential to deliver the performance, right? When the performance is needed.
And you're following the story after that bat. You're watching the kids in the dugout. You're watching, you're looking in the stands. There's
no doubt about it. Okay. I mean, and we talk about this a lot, but the first thing we want to look at is, can a kid play, right? Is the kid going to be able to play at our level? Can she going to be able to do the things? Is she going to be prepared, along with the academic side of it, of course? And then you start looking at all the other areas. Right now you start doing your homework, getting into the conversation piece of it when time allows, when it's legal, it's according to NCAA rules. Right.
Wherever they might be for whatever year
whatever year they might be in. When we start talking about the other stuff, right, we start talking about them and what their personalities like and their characters like, and their upbringing and family makeup. That's all critical. Right. That's all critical.
Well, it's important for people to know, because again, I think unguided, there's a natural direction to go in softball, and I just always warn people, keeping up with the softball Joneses, and who are you getting your advice from? Because just about everyone has some type of professional comparison, a professional job, an environment, something. It's just how you act, just how you conduct yourself. The natural approach is rarely the most productive one. So take whatever you think and how you're going to react naturally, and then compare it to something. There's examples in professional sports. There's examples in other professions.
Well, I think you kind of touched on it a little while ago. We don't know where the kids are going to be, right, when they're being recruited, or from your side or our side. We try and do our homework the best that we can. One thing I do know that all collegiate programs, it's hard to take a risk on a kid that the character is off, or a family that the character is off.
Because the predictability of...
That's where it's hard. You can err on a player maybe not being an All-American like you thought she was going to be when she was 17, or you can err on that, because we all do. We just take calculated risks the best that we can. What we don't want to err on, and what we can't afford to err on, is when you're dealing with character issues. Family issues, family, how, and I know you preach about this a lot, but about the family makeup on the field, right? And how
there's got to be a balance to that, and it has to be maintained. And we can deal with problems, we can deal with things, but you have to recognize when something's imbalanced to a point to where it's affecting the whole group.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised. Well, I don't think you'd be surprised. You've been doing this a long time. But when we sit there and we watch, and some of the things that come out of certain mouths and stuff, it is amazing. It is amazing, and shocking almost sometimes. Some of the things.
I think it goes back to you just mentioned this a couple of minutes ago. It's not that right away you say no, but you look at it. Okay, no.
Yeah.
But you look at it because that passion, again, might just be unmanaged, uneducated. So it's like, look, this is what that fire of why you just acted that way is exactly what we need to win a championship. You just don't know how to handle the fire. You're burning yourself up. You're burning your teammate. Again, I was that growing up.
Sure.
And so, but it's important. And I think the point I want to make, and the information I want people to get is just to realize, you're watching your kids play. Don't participate with them. Don't live through them. It's interesting how I just got back on the field for the first time in a few years, and it's interesting I hadn't had the perspective from being on the dirt, right? And one of the first things I noticed a couple of weeks ago was when kids go up, that the parents have the phone out, right? But it's not like, subtle. It's like, and so, you're the kid, and so maybe kids now, they're fine. That's just my mom, my dad, what they do, but like, bro, like feel like you're being watched, where really total acceptance of the at bat, and I know we're trying to capture something. But we have to manage our stress. So I think that's an important part of it. But some good recruiting tips and information for people to think about. And then, going back to the fundies, keep things simple. Keep things simple with the younger kids. I think that's really, really important. You're at an extremely high level of competition right now, and you're running camps for all kinds of players, including high-level players. But I think what I'd want people to understand is that you're not reinventing the wheel. It's really a lot of things that have kept this game going for so many years. So now we incorporate the data and the tradition. Wouldn't that be the ultimate?
That's what we're trying to get at, right?
Trying to mix
absolutely.
in, right? So I've always considered the field at Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton, one of the best around. Like, you know how I feel about that. In fact, I should have touched on this earlier, but that ceremony that you helped us with, having Norm throw out the first pitch, and then he passed like 3 weeks later. That crowd that night,
amazing.
That energy, the USSSA Pride were there, playing you guys, and that venue is, I don't know why I want to say it's special. It always has, and maybe because it's a Fullerton baseball, and going back to the players back in the 80s and just kind of what took place there, and the tradition of the game with the baseball program. And George, you and Kelly have been there how long now?
8 years now. This will be our 8th season together. Yeah.
And you know, I didn't know Judy very well, Judy Garman. I got to know Michelle Gromacki really well, and really a good friend. I consider her, and really great lady. And I would hope that they're happy with what they've seen just with the investment in the program. The investment that you and Kelly have made into this program is what has been really good to see on our end of it. That you're working it, man. You're on that. You're on the recruiting, and you have. It's like a coach that, wants to complain that they got shafted on bad fields or something like that. And I'm like, how many coaches did you call last week? And they look at you, and you're like, bro, you don't get both places. Number one, your team's coming up. They're not the team that everyone wants to see yet, and you're angry, but you're not picking up the phone. You have to get out on the trail. And so since you've been part of this program, I've really been proud of you and seeing what's happened with it, as far as like it's a valid program. It's legit, and you guys have done really well. And it's, now we're following. It's always been a program we followed, but now it's through the postseason and everything else. And so happy with how it's developed. And
very happy. Well, you talk about surrounding yourself with good people, right? You talk about surrounding yourself with good people. I mean, you talk about Judy Garman, who won the World Series in '86, and then Michelle came in and held it together.
And that video just circulated last week or two with Connie Clark pitching.
I did see that.
And everything else. That was pretty
incredible. And I think that's
and Michelle was catching. A Gromacki.
Yeah, she was. I mean, that's incredible. And I definitely feel there's tons of history there. And I think that's what's important, right? You have UCLA down the road, and they're always tough, and man, but the history there also, right, of national championships and the players that have played at UCLA, it's incredible. And at Fullerton, I mean, it's just, you just mentioned Connie Clark and some of those players, right? Michelle Gromacki.
Fullerton, I have to pat, the entire UCLA program and the entire school, that is what it is, right? But Fullerton baseball, Fullerton softball being right there, backed up to each other, and just, again, in the story, and they go back to, whether it's Ashley Van Boxmeer. We've had players in and out, for a lot of years. But just seeing the program be strong right now, and that you're got to be happy with the talent you're getting in. Yeah,
I am. I really am. I think we got some good kids coming in, and but it's hard work. It's no different in travel ball. I mean, there's a little differences here and there, but you're still trying to do the best for your team.
But
the level's different,
but the game's building chemistry, right? Yeah, all the little things. What do you work on this week?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to develop players. There's a lot more development, obviously, in the younger ages and as you go through travel ball. And sometimes I think us in the collegiate game, we forget about that. And I'm familiar with the travel ball, so I always tip my hat to the travel ball coaches, because that's where it's at. When we get them there, we tweak them, fix them, and if we have to do a lot of tweaking and stuff, then from the recruiting side, we're probably not doing our job right. We're probably not going after the right kids. So we try and be, I always tip my hat to travel ball coaches, because that's where it happens.
Well, we house them, so they have to be housed somewhere, and I use that as just a very basic term, because there's all different strengths. Just to keep a team together in today's business softball world is not easy. So it might not be the greatest fundamental coach or a championship coach, but just keeping a team, keeping an organization above water in today's very, are you in the right place? There's a lot of that. So I think that's important. Yeah. But you've worn both hats. And so, sometimes I think, it's easy for a travel coach to not understand the perspective of a college coach because they haven't been there, and vice versa. That happens, just part of our business. But when you can understand both, because we're all working together to develop the game. It's like us and umpires. We're all working together to establish a flow to a particular game, to grow our sport, to present our sport. We all kind of understand that. We can, hey, sometimes you got to be out there a little more. Sometimes you got to pull back a little bit. But I think that's an important part of it. So team looking good so far this year. Just got started.
Yeah,
right?
We had a good fall. We got a good fall. Got some good freshmen in, and we're excited about them. And it's always fun to get that's for me. That's probably, I wouldn't say the funnest part of the year, but one of the funnest is senior freshmen come in and see what they can do and see if you were right on them and if your evaluation was on point.
And see how they adapt their whole fall.
Yeah, and see if it's panning out like you thought it would pan out with them. And so far, knock on wood, but so far so good with our freshmen. And we were a young team last year, and we have our whole infield and outfield coming back. We lost one senior, so we're excited, and we have the freshman pitcher of the year who was a firecracker, actually played for you. Right. And we're excited about her as a sophomore, and that we think she's going to do some great things this year. So
awesome,
fired up about it. Yeah,
good. Let's kick it over to that shirt you're wearing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you got to look at it. Which one
am I wearing today?
Which one am I advertising today? Look at you, George. My gosh. So Team Mexico, been involved with the program a few years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exciting from a startup from, a concept, and then and right now you're running the junior team.
The junior national team. Correct?
Right? Yeah. So was that something they talked you into? Was that because it's more,
it's interesting. That's
you got a lot of things you're balancing.
That's a good question. Yeah. So I coached with the women's team for about 6 years, I think 5 or 6 years. When a lot of the players started getting together, and we brought a lot of the kids in that we just mentioned, right? We brought on Missy Takiaho and Katie Medina and Gordy Bravo to play on that, be part of that. So we started getting the talent pool a little stronger with the team. There was a little bit more funding, so we were able to do that. Since then, the team's taken off. Obviously, they're going to be in the Olympics in 2020, and I'm super fired up about it. Were you able to see the game streaming from Canada at that point? I did.
Because I sent you a note at that time. Because
I did.
It wasn't this big media thing. You had to kind of know it was there. And I watched, I think, about 3 or 4 games. Holy smokes!
Yeah, no, incredible. I mean, Dallas Escobedo
just games, man.
Awesome softball, right? And again, I tell people this, and they probably don't believe me too much until they watch. International softball is just amazing for many reasons. I mean, just the style of play within each country, USA, Mexico, and Cuba and all the Canadians, right? The style of play, what each
that diversity.
Flavor. Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it's just, you're talking about flavor from each country, right?
Did we ever take you up to Canada with us?
No, but I've been there a couple times.
Because there were a few years. There was a space in there where we just couldn't get there in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
So back before when you were coaching in college. But that was always the most enjoyable part of it, is like, you got to go listen to the Italians, and then you got to go listen to the Japanese team, and then you go listen to that team, and you go listen to, and it's just that you mentioned flavors. It's really, really interesting. The other thing is there's, I think when you can appreciate, when you watch women's open level, and just older players, they play with an ease. They're strong, they're professional, but they're not working against themselves. So pitchers they just throw with an easiness. It's just different. It's different to the eye. It's fun to watch, and there's not a lot of levels of what we would call pro-minded softball, but that's definitely
it's incredible. I mean, there is the talent is just amazing. The speed of the game, the execution of the game, right? The execution of pitches. It's just a beautiful thing to watch.
And then you factor in ISF bats. So now you factor in, you make a mistake, man, that ball freaking flies. Yeah. And I tell you, those games with Canada, Puerto Rico, and Mexico there at the end, Venezuela making a little noise. It was just awesome. So the program's got to be excited.
Very excited. I mean, it's never happened. It's never happened. U.S.
First time in the Olympics.
First time in the Olympics.
For softball.
In Mexico, looking back 9 years ago, I mean, had no business on a field sometimes. It was kind of scary. I mean, the scores were just so lopsided when we played some of the countries, and it's just nice to watch that we're competing. The junior team just came back from Colombia. last couple weeks ago and qualified for Worlds this summer.
Right.
So we'll be playing in Lima, Peru in Worlds. That's where they're going to be held this summer with the 18 and under team. So yeah, now I coach. I'm the head coach of the junior team. But it was funny. I actually, I'm a teacher by nature. Mm-hmm. I just love to teach, and I've always wanted to be part of the coaching staff with the junior team. Mm-hmm. And I would ask the president of the Mexican Federation. I mean, I asked him, I think, for 3 years, I want to coach the junior team. And I just kept bugging him about it. Right. He was always shocked.
Hit the table so hard.
No,
Lucas is going to get mad at us.
I get fired up sometimes.
But I like it, though. I like it. So you asked him to work with the junior team?
Yeah. And then finally, out of nowhere, he gave me a call and asked me if I was interested in coaching the junior team. And I said, heck yeah, man, I've been asking you that for quite a while. So that's
we had to test
cool.
you for 6 years.
Yeah, with the women's team,
Are we doing okay now? I know a couple of these kids. Like what I got to do.
Yeah, exactly. But that's fun, because I like the teaching side of it, and that gives me a good feel for the younger kids and the development of that, and that's exciting. That's one thing that sometimes we don't get at the collegiate level. Yeah. Is that?
And you said you're going to Peru with this?
Yeah, Lima, Peru, awesome. in August.
And is that a worldly international type thing, or is that South American? What is that?
No, that's
world championships.
Yeah, that's world championships. Yeah.
So you'll have Canada.
Japan will be there. Canada, Africa, Australia, everybody that qualified will.
I think what's interesting, it was just fun, and the experience I had was the hotel. So when all the teams are at the same hotel, and watch how they eat. Yeah. Watch, are they social with other teams, the other coaches. Somehow some kind of tie-in, some guy coaching college or something like that. But then all of a sudden it just, it's pretty interesting. And then,
well, you talk about the Japanese, Tony. I mean, I was fortunate enough last summer. I was in Tokyo, in Japan. I was there for 3 weeks, and sometimes you have a lot of downtime. Mm-hmm. So I got the opportunity to go watch three colleges practice, do their collegiate practice, not the national team, but the amazing practices that they have, and the repetition of the ground ball, of the relay, of all of
their own
nuances,
flavor,
their own flavor to
the way
it,
their gloves open, every little,
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I sat there and watched the national team practice. They were working cuts and relays in 45 minutes just on the outfielders hitting the cut, right? Hitting the glove, and if they don't hit the glove, they have to do it over again. And just over the repetition that they put in, the time they put into being perfect. Or at least working towards perfection. Sure. It's pretty impressive.
Sure.
It's
now combine that with the respect that they have, the humility that they have, and that their idea of being able to thank you is to clean the park that they played in, right? And
absolutely.
Again, and earlier we mentioned an example of just someone being humble and being successful, and especially with renowned programs and kind of standard-setting programs. That always stands out to me.
We talked a little earlier about the community, right, and how sport allows you to get out of your city or your neighborhood. Yeah. Well, softball, sometimes you can get out of your country.
Well, you just said you're in Tokyo for 3 weeks.
Right, 3 weeks in Tokyo.
And you have to sit around, as again, those that are fortunate enough to do it, just sit there and go, am I here in Tokyo with Team Mexico softball? It's just crazy. There's pinch me moments all over the place.
Absolutely.
But those pinch me moments could also be this weekend. I'll say it's going to sound a little cheesy. Is that my daughter out there healthy? She's got 2 arms, 2 legs. She's, there's nothing pending of this huge disaster. And today's early signing day. So for a lot of the untrained, this is a horrible day when they're not signed yet. And isn't the good news, because none of this, I'm just going to say this disclaimer and we go PG-13, none of this is bullshit. This is all truth, people. Yeah. So if you smell bullshit on this, we need to connect or something, because this is truth.
Right.
The truth of today's business softball world is that there's more opportunities. So whether it's from the portal or whatever, there's more opportunities around the clock. Even with the days of early verbals, if you were an unsigned senior, you were still going. It just was a hell of a road, really rough. But 99% of everyone goes. The point I want to make today is that your perspective empowers you, or your perspective can just deflate you. Get excited about the fact that there's opportunities, and if you're creating value, if you're following typical softball people, you're thinking about what you need and what you want to get, but you're not thinking about what makes you valuable. So we talked about behavior. We talk about your ability to make decisions on the field. You're going to recognize a pitcher that can make adjustments versus pitchers that don't and just know what they're doing right. Same with hitters. What's happening pitch to pitch. Gosh, swing early, swing late. Make a throwing error and don't shake your arm afterwards. Don't say my bad.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many different things that create value, because value is not only from your top 3 to 5 players. Value is in the role players, create value. The best part about today's softball world is that if you work on your value, the value of your team, the value of you as a player, you're going to see it. Because if we just eliminate all of those that are result oriented and beat themselves up after, I pitched bad today because I gave up 3 home runs. Well, again, this was learned. Well, what I learned later was when you make a mistake over the white and they hit it out, that's what happens. So you made a mistake, but you're not a bad pitcher. And she hit the mistake. How about the mistakes you made today that they hit in outs? That was over the white. It was a ground ball to short. Look at that mistake as well, because that was a pitch that wasn't located, Everything's just a story. But that value, don't you agree, can be there for every player, right?
Absolutely. And everybody brings different value. It's like compared to a coaching staff. I mean, you got to bring value.
Yeah.
I say this a lot with the Mexican team, but there's no real free ride. There's no we call it limosna. I can't remember how to say it in English, but there's no free handouts.
Being there, right?
Yeah, be there and bring some kind of value to your team. Yeah. We have a coaching staff with the Mexican team, and every single one, I want to make sure that they bring some kind of value. Right. If you bring no value, it doesn't matter how much I like you or whatever. We can't. I can't afford that.
And I said, I'm going to charge you $3 to watch this game because you're just watching.
You're just watching, man.
You're just a spectator.
Come on, let's help these players out and make them better and make us coaches better as well, right?
So is that a message that you would want to get out to those kids that are still to the uncommitted senior today in 2019, 220 graduate? What's your advice to her?
My advice: keep going. If you like to play this game and you like it, hey, there's going to be a school for you. You just got to continue to
it's
find it.
It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world for sure.
But they're seeing all their teammates tonight sign.
Yeah,
it's hard.
I would try not. It is hard, and I have daughters myself, and I've had a daughter that's
you've been through this.
I've
Absolutely, you've been there.
But you got to keep your chin up and you got to keep going. And if you can't keep your chin up and keep going, maybe that's why you are still uncommitted, and that was seen at one place or another. So you got to keep grinding after it and get after it. There'll be a place for you. There's over 300 Division I schools, and then you got Division IIs and NAIAs, and there's
all going. There's not this surplus of 1,200 players a year that go, oh, you guys all missed the boat. They all left, and now you're left on the dock and you got nothing. That's not part of the story.
Right. One of the biggest events in Colorado is the
unsigned,
the unsigned game, right? The unsigned. I mean, you go to one of those, and the college coaches that are there, it is amazing. Yeah. So be prepared for that moment too, because if you're not signed now, be prepared for that week or that weekend or that day, because there'll be tons of college.
Isn't that important? Because after the call, you don't know who's going to blow out a knee in your season right now. You don't know. Okay, you got an early indicator on some of your freshmen, but someone might come in in just one moment. So here we get the conversations early summer of I need something now. Of course, I didn't know that in December. Right now in November and December, colleges are preparing for their year, but they're not saying, oh, this isn't going to work. We need something next year, unless it's an injury, right? So that cycle, it never stops. It just continues to work. So, and it would be a shame. It's understandable if you don't have any education of how to really survive and even thrive in this industry, because then it's kind of obvious where you're at. Again, this is the truth. The great news is that, let's say you haven't had value because of no mental game, no really your approach towards things. Well, the greatest part about that is you can change that in 2 weeks. Yeah. It's not like you have to go learn a different arm slot or you have to go hit left-handed now. That's just a perspective. So how you talk about a game. When somebody asks you, how did it go? Don't always start with the results of the game. I felt good. I felt calm. Saw some good pitches. Nothing to show for it today, but I know I was playing the game right, because that approach is what's going to lead to, oh yeah, and I scored up on a couple. Oh yeah, and I had a double and a home run. But it always goes back to, how'd you feel? What did you see? What were your decisions? And again, that's the learn part of the game. So.
Absolutely, and you touch on a lot. And I still remember when Tina Iosefa was interviewed after a big game at Georgia. I don't remember if it was that last game or But I know you talk about a lot the process, right, of certain things. And hey, was your process good today?
Right.
Was your process good? And
Know that story.
Yeah.
Right. Because don't we hear that at the end of every most big league games now is that big moment, that big home run. I was just looking for a good pitch. I happened to get it, and they happen to put the good part of the bat on it. You don't hear all this expertise from the major leaguer.
Yeah.
Like, man, I felt that was a 27 launch angle. Like that's all part of it. I felt good. My rhythm was good. I was seeing the ball well. It's always stuff like that. And then what happens is you control that game to game. You don't have to worry about those results, and the results actually fall in the pocket. And then when you're not getting results, how about this one? When you're 1 for 11 and you've got the right mindset, the hits are around the corner, man. That's a learned thing, because unlearned, you want to break everything. You want to kill everything. But the learned one's like, defensively, I don't want to face the kid that's 1 for 11. She's due for 2 for 12, even though it's still not a great average. Law of averages, so she's going to get a dinker, a bleeder, a tweener, a Texas leaguer. Something's going to happen. And we got 2 outs with a runner on third, up by 1. So this game is like, you think you got it figured out. That's what you don't know. The game's always going to keep us honest.
That's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Hey, man, thanks. I told you it was going to go by fast.
Oh, wow. It's over already?
That's it.
This is awesome. Well, thanks, Tony. I appreciate it.
I didn't get any text from Luke in there, but honestly, George, listen, I started off telling you it's a special day, and it is for a couple of reasons in here. But, where we started, even I'd say relative humble beginnings, or where we started as kids and stuff like that. And for all cultures, all people, ethnicities, everything, genders, everything's possible in this world. I like to believe that we still live in the United States of America, but we're just 2 examples of guys that do something that we love. I give you real credit for everything you've done with your family. You've been able to wear multiple hats and things, and I know you're not done, man. And so to see you were there with the P hat and then the Mesco shirt, and then who knows, man, if we live long enough, 5 or 10 years from now,
Who knows?
I'll get you in before then. But we'll see what happens. So I can tell you this, man. I love you a lot. I'm really, really proud of you. Keep up the good work. Say hi to Kelly and everyone over at Fullerton and everyone that we know. And then we'll keep our eye on you out there on the road, man.
You got it, man.
Okay?
Good luck to you, too.
All right.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right.
Thanks, Tone.
All right. See you, everybody.